Once cured, this was then sanded back and the area is given 3 coats of epoxy primer.
So last week we repaired our rusty keel and gave the whole boat a coat of paint. This week we do all those other things on the outside in preparation for putting her in the water.
To stick to the primers from the same manufacturer, at least they should all then be compatible.
So we'll keep this short. Let's face it, it's not going to be the most interesting of films, is it? To be honest, it's not the sort of thing we'd ever normally film anyway. But since we've started filming our winter makeover, we kind of feel like we've got to carry on now and show you the whole process. So feel free to switch off and wait till next week if you want to see something a bit more interesting, when hopefully we'll be going in the water. But anyway, the process starts with us going over the whole hull with some rubbing compound, just to remove that build up of whatever it is that builds up on fiberglass boats sitting in salt water. I use a damp cloth to apply the rubbing compound, just roughly placing it on the hull in the patches that need doing, and then the buffing mop with a foam pad on it and gain more water to really rub it in and clean the hull off. It really makes short work of it and it's not too hard a job to do really. Once it's dry, you can then buff off the last of the rubbing compound to leave a nice clean hull, ready for polish. When it comes to polish, I use myrrh, not because I've found it to be the best polish to use, but way back when Hannah and I bought our very first boat, there was a half-used bottle of myrrh on board. So when it came to polishing, obviously that's what I used. And when that ran out halfway through, obviously I just bought some more myrrh to finish the job. And so it's gone on. So every boat we've ever had since then has always used that half bottle of myrrh that seems to be left over each time. So there's probably better things out there, but it seems to do a good enough job for us. We're quite happy with it, so I've kind of no real reason to want to change. But anyway, same process. Apply it with a damp cloth, rub it well in this time by hand. I don't really like using the electric polishing mops, it doesn't seem to offer much. So I rub it in by hand, let it dry and then buff it off by hand. The myrrh actually comes off really easily once it's dry. You just got to leave it kind of just the right amount of time. If it bakes on in the sun, it's really hard. If you do it when it's still wet, it's quite hard. But you get the timing right, it comes off pretty simply. I only put 1 coat on and it was lunchtime. And to be honest, I'd normally put 2, but time's running out and the enthusiasm's running out. So that'll do for now. We're hoping to park Seahorse in the marina in the next few weeks over Easter, so maybe I can give it another coat of polish then. Anyway, after lunch, the family arrived, so I'm not on my own for the first time. I think they just want to be able to say they helped. So Izzy and I get the hose out and start scrubbing off the decks. It's hardly spotless, but he gets the worst of it off, and Izzy liked it. Meanwhile, Hannah busies herself inside the cabin, starting to put back all that junk that we took off at the start of the process. Well, hopefully not quite all the junk, but I don't know, somehow it all seems to find its way back on board. That's pretty much it. All I've got to do now is sort out all the rigging again, fix the controls that I pointed out on my list at the beginning of the process, and lay all the ropes out ready for the mast.
Really, Sally?
I'm soaked.
Are you? Oh.
Shoes are soaked, butt soaked, legs are soaked.
Oh. I'm not. The boat didn't leak though. Which is a good thing.
Actually, on the subject of the mast, do you remember we had to remove that Genoa halyard sheave block from our mast that had collapsed? Well, after all the struggles of finding that seldom part, I came to fit it, only to realise that I should have paid more attention when I drilled out the rivets, because the holes that held the rivets had suffered badly with galvanic corrosion and were now too large for them. I did try riveting it on, in that way you just hope the rivets will squeeze up tight enough to fill up any gap, but to no avail. So I did what I normally do, posted a question on the Practical Boat Owner forum, and they said use riv nuts. Well, riv nuts are kind of like pot rivets. You don't need a pot rivet gun, and they don't have a tail. What you do is you put what is the head of the rivet, the riv nut, inside a now opened up hole. You tighten up a bolt which squeezes up the thread and bulges the riv nut itself to jam it into the place, in much the same way that the tail on a pop rivet will pull up and bulge out the bottom to lock it in. And once you've done that, you can then simply screw the part you want to, or bolt the part that you want to fit into the riv nut on the fitting. Mine was complicated slightly by the fact that because it's a round mast, or a rounded shaped mast, the riv nut doesn't sit flat. And because the sheave block itself was designed to push up against the mast, I needed to machine out a bit from underneath the sheave block just to let it sit back nicely. I'm fortunate at work in that we have some basic sort of machine tools that I could do that, but it'd be a bit more of a problem if you're doing this as a sort of home gamer. Anyway, I did that, covered it all in Duralac, that horrible yellow paste that just stains everything and is awful to work with. But I'd asked the question previously, do I need to use it and is there anything else to use? And no one really came up with anything better, so I decided just to stick with what worked. Unfortunately, rather than have to buy a new tube, Steve, the bosun, who just happens to have his boat right next to mine, found a half-open tube in the stores at Bedway Yacht Club, so it saved me a bit of money. I only, after all, needed a small smear on it, although as you can see, a small smear turned out to be a bit more than that, but it'll clean up. Anyway, I thought I'd show you that, but really, it's time to get on. Thanks for watching. I'm Ian, and this has been Sailing with the Foxwell family. See you next week, when hopefully we'll get a wet again.